Mr. Hervey, I just want to go back and kind of set the stage for my question. 1986, the law that was passed was highly debated in the legislature, was born out of great frustration and anger because LILCO had so mismanaged the electric system. And in spite of outcries that Shoreham should not have moved forward, they just plowed ahead. I now feel, and I feel very badly for the people in Japan, what's happened there, but I've had more people since that incident say to me, I guess you're vindicated that Shoreham should not have moved forward. So there was great excitement in the passage of that law, and people felt that we were creating for the people their utility. You have said numerous times in your presentation, we don't pay dividends, we don't have, but you do have, your shareholders are the people of Nassau and Suffolk County. They have put their faith in this utility. You've talked about being good stewards, and I'm sure that each and every day you try. When I look at the 1997 resolution passed by the PACB, are you aware of that resolution?
Absolutely.
Are you aware of its tenets, provisions?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. There are two provisions. One talks about LIPA will guarantee that over a 10-year period commencing on the date when LIPA begins providing electric service, average rates within the LIPA service territory will be reduced by no less than 14%. And then it goes on to define that, giving, with your chart, the oil situation, and provides some things. That is a heavy burden. And at some point, people should say, don't you think, can't do that. We can't do that. That's in here. Right after that, it says, LIPA will not implement or increase average customer rates exceeding 2.5% over a 12-year period. What we did with my legislation is basically codify that provision in the PACB resolution. So from 97 forward, someone should have said, can't do that. I mean, I never heard that. No one ever said, or maybe I wasn't hearing, that we can't do that, either provision 4 or provision 5. I think, Mr. Hervey, in my humble judgment, and as the person who authored this, the creation of LIPA, that we're at a critical juncture, because when I go through this document, we are, you know, there are things in here, LIPA's workforce must be protected. I hear lots of comments, like uptight people who are wondering what's happening with the delivery system. I think we're failing in almost every category here. And the time may come, we may be at the time of saying that LIPA is not serving its stakeholders, and that we need to look and recreate another delivery system for the people of Long Island.
Thank you, Senator. I just want to point to a few things on this chart. As you see, the very first bar to the left is the local rate, and you can see that the rate clearly dropped, not the percentage you talked about, but by more. It dropped by about 20% or so. Mm-hmm. So what I've drawn on this chart is then a 3% inflation rate, because the provision was to drop it and keep it low, compared to what it would otherwise be. So I think there was some understanding there that, the fuel is something you can't really 100% do. So the lower black line I've drawn there is 3%. And we know a lot of these years in the 80s, 90s, and 2000, we had a lot more inflation than 3%. But I took a conservative and drew a 3% line. And that comes up to, ending in January of 2011, up to a number that is higher than our actual rate. So in all that time, we have managed to keep the rate, yes, it's gone up and down, but right now at this point in time, and the trend over the past few years, is that the rate is below what the rate of inflation has been. I'm sure there are other bills that you pay that you can't say that for, but ours has been below the rate of inflation, at least at this point in time. And where it has come up, we've tried to bring it back down. The other line I drew here is from the local rate, because the provision is to keep it lower than what it would have been. So I know this is a dramatic oversimplification, but it's just for illustration purposes. That I took that line and started at the local rate and said, what would the rates reasonably may have been with 3% inflation over all these years? And you see that's the one that 185. So I think we've maintained, not just for the length required under the original bill, but for a much longer time, we've maintained that 20% reduction. Now, we've been pretty public about saying that we are also at a crossroads, and I believe you're correct with that. We have the management services agreement, which is our major contract with National Grid, expiring in 2013, December 30th. It is very rare that you find a business that its business expires on a certain date, but ours does. We won't be able to do business at that certain date unless we do that the right way. So we have an RFP out. In that very same RFP, we have required use of union labor on Long Island. We've required that contract be picked up. And what's more, we've constructed it so that some of the labor that has gone off of Long Island will come back to Long Island. So I think we've looked at that particular obligation that we have. Keep in mind that when we do have this work going on over in the private sector, meaning the investor-owned utility part, that they will do what investor-owned utilities will do, and they'll try to address the bottom line. So we want to address the bottom line also, but we also want to get all the work done the right way. And I think from a results standpoint, and I'll just reiterate, from a results standpoint, where all that labor is applied, meaning the construction maintenance of the transmission and distribution system, the men and women who do that do a phenomenal job. And it's reflected in our reliability. From a reliability standpoint, meaning frequency of interruptions to customers and the time duration of those interruptions, we are in the top quartile, and in some cases the top 10% of the nationwide, compared to investor-owned utilities and everybody else. So but that's what our customers deserve. We do have high prices, and we need to manage that. But at high prices, you can't have high prices and bad reliability. You have to have good high reliability. So I think that some of the things you brought up that we in fact are addressing, and I don't take it that we can't do it. We're challenged to try to keep rates down, and we're challenged to try to keep that gap, even though that provision in that original legislation that had a timeline on it. We're past that timeline. Almost every employee at LIPA lives on the island. All of our trustees live on the island. We're all ratepayers. The rates are too high, and we want them to be lower, and we need to be managing that.
What about the 2.5%?
Yeah. So in all this time, we have. I have two quick things I want to say. One thing I just want to come back to, our strategic study. We are going ahead with the RFP to look at what the next contract with a national grid or a company like it might be. We are also, and we've publicly said this, looking at two other options. One is to fully municipalize, in other words, to bring all of the employees in-house and operate it as a fully integrated utility. The other is to privatize, sell the assets, and go back to a investor-owned utility model. I expect in the next month or so we'll have the results of that. There's nobody at LIPA that is afraid of any of those results. We will make those results public and put them out there and show you what we think the rates would be under those various scenarios. And we're using outside, nationwide, nationally recognized consultants to do that work. So it always deserves looking at to say, what about privatizing? In other words, what about going back to the other model where the competitiveness of the profit motive drives cost down? That's what the private model is.
I would
we're looking at
hope that before your board makes a decision on that you will have a dialogue with members of the legislature, with elected officials, so that you would have their input before you make that final decision.
Sure.
And I would say to you, I go back to your good steward. I'm not sure that you would get a good steward rating from the communities that you serve. And they're part of the constituency, not only the people that pay the rates, but also the communities that you serve. But you haven't talked about the 2.5% provision that has oversight with the PSC that was in the PACB resolution.
Sure. And I'm not avoiding, I just wanted to go through those other items in addition. So the provisions aren't exactly the same. It's not exactly the same wording between the PACB provision and the bill. So that leaves room for interpretation. So that's one of the points I pointed out, that there's a question about that. But if you look at that base rate, the 2.5% in the PACB provision was the base rate. That's the purple part there. That's what the base rate is, and it has not changed in all of these years, except this year when it changed slightly. The 2.5% is just a number that's out there. If we trigger up over it, we're going to have to go for review. That doesn't, it's neither here nor there. It's something we have to do if we trigger that 2.5%. We would rather not have rate increases that big. We would rather not have rate increases at all. And I think that the fact that we've been able to keep that delivery charge stable all these years demonstrates that.
I think you're parsing with words. I think that the most critical thing is to keep faith with people. And so we agree to disagree, and hopefully the governor will make the right decision.
I just want to mention, Senator, I'm not arguing with you on our need to have more credibility in the community. There's absolutely that's the case. My opinion is that one thing that we need to continue to do at LIPA is to continue to professionalize the organization. We should be less political and more pragmatic and less than we have in the past. So I think what we need to do is have a good, strong business acumen at LIPA that can address these issues in a competent way. And that's ultimately, you mentioned LOCO. LOCO had concerns. Public had concerns with LOCO. The public is having concerns with us. We acknowledge those. We're not running away from those. We need to fix those. But the way we fix them, I think, is by having the most professional staff at LIPA that we can. Any number of oversight mechanisms won't change that if we don't change it. That's what we need to change, is the professionalism and depoliticize LIPA.
No, I disagree with you. When I look at the LIPA board, you only have one board member who newly appointed that really represents the public, speaks out on behalf of the public, and so you can professionalize all you want. This is the people's utility. It's their utility, and you have to listen to them. They are your shareholders. You would, if this was a for-profit organization, you would be listening to your shareholders. Your shareholders are our constituents, and you're not listening to them.